Get everything right. Okay, so there's a fascinating machloket related to the omer, which we're counting at the moment. You all know it. It seems very, very technical at first glance, but the truth is that there's something far deeper, maybe something far, far deeper at play. We all know that during Beit Sheni, as hard as it is to imagine, the Jewish people were very divided. And there were different groups and different sects and had different ideas about a lot of things. Most famous, we have the Prushim versus the Tzdukim, other subgroups as well, but that is the broad division. And again, we're split essentially along the question of the veracity, the authenticity, and the authority of the Torah Shebaal Peh. And one of the places, a number of famous machlokot that come out between the Prushim and the Tzdukim. One of the most famous is, of course, related to Sfirat HaOmer. Right? We all know the pasuk says, "Usfatem lachem mimachorat Shabbat." What does it mean mimachorat Shabbat? So there are at least 4 different opinions, interpretations as to what mimachorat Shabbat means. Obviously, only one of them is correct. But in our tradition, as we all know, it's based in the oral law, is that machorat Shabbat means the day after Pesach. The Shabbat here does not refer to Shabbat Bereshit, does not refer to Saturday, it refers to the first Yom Tov of Pesach. It's actually very interesting. If you look, this is in Parashat Emor, which is this week's Parasha. If you look through the Parashat Moadot, so 5 different times in the Torah, it talks about the different Chagim, the different halachot, etc. And each time there's a slightly different focus, slightly different language. In Parashat Emor, virtually all of the Chagim are referred to as a Shabbaton. Nearly all of them. If you look through Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, Shabbat are all called Shabbaton, or referred to as Shabbat. And in that sense, so Pesach also is referred to as a Shabbat. Machorat Shabbat refers to the day after Pesach. So from the second night, that is when we start. Counting. In Chutz La'aretz, this is a little bit more confusing because the second day is also a Shabbat, right? But that comes later, and that's a side. But that is one understanding. And that is our understanding of what Machorat Shabbat refers to. Come along the Tzdukim and say, no, when it says Machorat Shabbat, Shabbat means Saturday. And therefore, you would start counting on Sunday. Always start counting on Yom Rishon, that day of the week. Again, for us, it can fluctuate. It can be at different days of the week. But for them, it would always be on the same day of the week. The nafka mina of that is when you finish counting your 7 weeks and you get to Shavuot, which the name of the Chag literally means weeks. Right, so it would always be on Yom Rishon B'Shavua. It would always be on the first day, and that's actually brought in the Gemara. That's brought as the reason why that's the only place where an explanation is brought. It says the Gemara Masechet Menachot of Samechei says, "Are you Beitosim Omlim?" I said Tzdukim, Beitosim, similar, maybe the same group, maybe different groups, be it as it may. But they said Atzeret Achal Shabbat. Nitzpal lehem Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai v'amar lehem shotim minayim lachem. When Yochanan ben Zakkai said, you're wrong. That's not what it means. So they said, what's your proof? Nobody could answer back. Nobody could answer Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. There was one of the elders of the Beit Osim who said the following. He said, Moshe Rabbeinu ahev Yisrael hayah. Moshe Rabbeinu loved the Jewish people. V'yodea, she'atzeret yom echadu. Normally, the Chagim, again, this is before Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galiot, so as opposed to Pesach, which is a whole week, and Sukkot, which is 8 days, so Atzeret, Shavuot is only 1 day. Amad v'tikna achal Shabbat k'dei sheYisrael mitangim shnei yamim. Therefore, that's the explanation that's brought by the Beit Osim in the Gemara, that Moshe Rabbeinu wanted Bnei Yisrael to have a long weekend. So it would be in such a way that it was always counted the day after. So you have Shabbat and then you have Sunday, you have 2 days in a row, 2 days of Yom Tov, 2 days off work, and that's it. Okay, sounds a little bit silly, it sounds a little bit trivial in terms of the Gemara, but as I say, maybe there's something much deeper that's going on here, and it's this. This idea of Machorat Shabbat. So it's Machorat Shabbat means on Sunday, it means on the day of the week, or it means the day after Pesach. Why is this such a big machloket, such a big disagreement? Why do we find so much said about this? So maybe, again, it's more than just technical. Maybe when the Tzdukim come along and they say Macharata Shabbat, okay, let's think about for a moment, we're counting Sfirata Omer. So Machloket, when we count, do we say La Omer? Do we say Ba Omer? What does the Omer refer to? The Omer is a measurement. It's a measurement of barley, and that was brought as the Korban Omer on the first day on the Macharata Shabbat. Where else in the Torah do we find the term Omer that's used? Only in one context, and that is in the context of the man. Now we know that we have Zeicher Laman. It's not unheard of. We have throughout the Chagim, throughout Shabbat, we have Lechem Mishnah every week. We have is brought as a Zeicher Laman. It could be that counting the Omer in a sense, maybe this is how they understood it. I mean, Macharata Shabbat refers to commemoration of the man. What specifically about the man? What is it that they were commemorating? So in Parshat B'Shalach, which is where we find the term Omer that's used, and this is where we have this idea of the that where we're told about the man and about the man falling. When did the man begin to fall? So it says, the pasuk tells us that it was as follows: B'chamisha Asar Yom, it was the 15th day of the second month. Rashi says, Nipalesh Hayom Shel Chanayazo lefi shebo bayom karta hachalala sheotziu miMitzrayim v'otzochu laman. That day, which essentially a month after they've left Egypt, was the day when they ran out of food. We're always thinking, they took the matzot with there, maybe, had enough for one. They were eating that for a month. They had that, and then they ran out of food. And that is when they needed the man. That's when the man began to fall. Lamadnu, shachlu mishalei batzek, or mishalei matzah, there's different girsaot, shishim v'achat seudot, 2 meals a day, so 61 meals. When Israel were eating matzah, you think you're sick of it by the end of Pesach, right? 61 meals. V'yalad le'eman b'shisha asar b'iyar, V'yom rishon b'Shabbat haya kedit v'msechet Shabbat. Rashi over here quotes the Gemara in Shabbat that tells us that, okay, it's not the same date, but the day on which the man began to fall was Yom Rishon b'Shabbat. In other words, Macharata Shabbat being Yom Rishon, in a sense that Meir, Rabbi Sachs has an essay where he unpacks this, and I think he makes a very compelling argument. It doesn't say anywhere explicitly that the Tzdukim were commemorating the beginning of the falling of the man. But that makes a lot of sense based on the fact that it's the Omer, based on the fact that it's Macharata Shabbat. It has to be Yom Rishon because that is the day. That is when the man began to fall. And essentially, you could say we went from having the Lechem Oni, which we had in Mitzrayim, the Lechem Oni, the Matzah, which we went up. That is the bread of affliction, and the man is so to speak, quote unquote, the bread of freedom. That's what we might be celebrating, what we might be commemorating. Okay. Sounds like a good argument. Problem is this is the Tzdukim, right? So what do we say, and why do we reject that, and why do we go against that? So very, very briefly, the phrase Macharata Shabbat, like we said, we might have expected it to say we're saying Macharata Pesach. The phrase Macharata Pesach does appear in the Tanakh, and the place where that appears is in Sefer Yoshua, and the Rambam quotes this pasuk from Sefer Yoshua, and he says that Mimacharata Pesach, that was the day when the man stopped falling. And that was the day when they had to start eating from the land and eating from the fruit of Eretz Israel. In other words, Macharata Shabbat or Macharata Pesach, if we're commemorating specifically the day of Shabbat Bereshit, or the first day of the week, that may be a commemoration of when the man began to fall. Whereas if you say no, Macharata Pesach, although it's Macharata Shabbat, but we mean the day after Pesach, that is the day not when the man began to fall, but that is the day when the man stopped falling. That is the day when we were in Eretz Yisrael, when we went from the Lechem Min HaShamayim, so to speak, to the Lechem Min HaAretz. When we went from that miraculous existence, we went to that natural existence. And essentially, maybe this is exactly the machloket between. It's not just a technicality. It's not just what does that word mean, but on a much, much, much deeper level. When we talk about freedom, what is freedom? When we talk about the ideal level of existence, the Tzdukim are essentially saying, ideally, we don't want to be involved in the world. We want to have nothing to do with it. We want to live that miraculous life, that ideal thing, lechem coming from Shamayim. That's the ideal. That's what we're commemorating. That's what freedom is. We stay away from work, etc. Come along the Pushkim and say, no. The ideal is to be shutafim with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Maaseh Bereshit. The ideal is not to be the midbar, the bread that's falling from the sky, from heaven. That's very, very nice. But that's an intermediate phase. But coming into Eretz Yisrael, being able to work the land, being able to live a natural existence and elevating that life, being able to work. We have Shabbat in contrast to Pesach, in contrast to Mitzrayim, where there was slavery and there was no rest. So we have Shabbat. But Shabbat teaches you that you can stop working, but then you have Macharat Shabbat, you can carry on working, you can go and you can contribute and you can develop and you can bring into the world. I think that essentially is the days that we are in now. We've just had Yom Ha'atzmaut, coming to Yom Yerushalayim, special days within Sfirat omer that show us that in recent times, in our generations, our ability, our partnership with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, our partnership with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Geula process, and that is maybe a little bit behind of what this argument really is. Macharat Shabbat, something far, far deeper than just that technicality. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha, omer, HaKadosh Baruch Hu